Thank you. Thanks, Jeff. Yeah, you should have seen the audience at Piedmont Virginia Community College when I was the commencement speaker, and I told them I want to give you some life lessons, everything I learned the 4 years that I spent in Attica State Prison. So I want to tell you a story of what's happening in the workforce world in Virginia, but I think it's a story that is common around the nation. So if you look at Virginia, and I'm clicking here, we have there we go. Virginia's not far from here, across the Potomac. If you look from kind of a 30,000-foot view, Virginia looks really good. Good place to do business, great place to raise a kid. I plan to do that, retire in Virginia. And it has a great educated workforce. However, if you travel Virginia, and I do frequently, you'll find that there are two Virginias, and I'm not talking about West Virginia. One Virginia is that kind of green color. We call it the Golden Crescent. It has about 6 million people. And if it were its own state, with respect to educational attainment, it would be number 2 in the country. The other Virginia, which we call the Horseshoe, represents about 70% of the geography, has about 2.2 million people. And if it were its own state, it would be 50th in the country with respect to educational attainment. So the problem that we have in rural Virginia and also in certain urban areas is what I refer to as a 1-2-7 problem. And it goes like this. If you have to make a hire that requires an advanced degree, think scientist, think advanced engineer, think physician, you probably can find that hire. And if you can't, you can import them from another state or even another country. But that hire will have to be supported by 2 who have an undergraduate degree. So think accounting, think IT. And in many cases, with some exceptions, you'll be able to find those 2 to support that 1. But here's the problem. The 1 and the 2 will need to be supported by 7 of those that I refer to are in the middle skilled occupations. So think truck driver, think nursing assistant, think machinist, think welder. And it just goes on and on and on. And that's the workforce problem that we have in Virginia. We can't find enough of the 7s, and we can't import them. We have to raise them in Virginia. Now, in the short years ahead, Virginia is going to have to fill about 1.5 million jobs. Almost all of them will require a post-secondary credential. But most of them will not require a bachelor's degree. So here's a question I posed because we're up here in this part of the country. Here, beyond cybersecurity, what's the hardest job to fill today in the high-tech hub of Northern Virginia? Here's the answer: certified electrician. I have my own electrician story. I have a home in Deltaville, Virginia. Does anybody know where Deltaville, Virginia is? If you find out that the world is going to end, come to Deltaville, Virginia. We're about 30 years behind the times. It's a very small little community in a very rural county, and it's on the Chesapeake Bay. And I bought a home there about 5 years ago. And I'm on the water, and I needed to bring electricity down to a pier. And so what do you do? Well, you look for an electrician, and I found one, and it was a guy, and he said, I'll be there in about 2 weeks. And he came, and he spent about half a day running an electrical line down from the house, sloping down to my pier. And as he left, he gave me a bill for $3,000. And I looked at him, I said, I don't even pay my lawyer this much money. And he said, I know, that's why I quit my law practice and enrolled in a community college to become an electrician. Now, I made up the ending, but he did give me a bill for $3,000. So what are these credentials? Well, they're made in the USA, kind of like jazz. They are the fastest growing credential that we are issuing now in our community college sector. We have about 468 of these pathways. Not all of them lead to high-paying jobs, but many of them do. Here are some examples. Plumber, truck driver, pharmacy technician, welder. It just goes on and on. The sevens. These are the hardest jobs that employers are trying to fill in Virginia. So how does cyber fit into all of this? For those of you baby boomers out there, you remember the movie that kind of launched Dustin Hoffman, The Graduate, when he's talking to the business leader, and the business leader says, the future is plastics. Well, here it's cyber. It's not the future, it's the present. About 20% of the cybersecurity jobs that are available now are right here, So we have 4 community colleges that are nationally accredited, and you need to go through one of these programs to get a federal cybersecurity job. One's right across the river here, Nova, Northern Virginia Community College, and then the DCC is a rural community college, Danville Community College. And soon we'll have access to every household to these programs. Like I said, you need this designation to get a federal job. So here in Nova, it's an associate degree program. 3 years ago, our enrollment was 50 students. And today, 1,400. About half of them already have the bachelor's degree. They want to go from 40,000 to 88,000. So if you would just go home and just look at the help wanted sections and just look at what is trying to be recruited, the jobs that are being recruited, you're going to see things like this. Most of these jobs are going to require a certification of some kind or a license, master electrician license. If you can fix something, particularly if you can fix a part of a human being, there's a middle-class job out there for you. And yet, the frustration I have is when I talk to parents, many of you are parents, I say, what do you think about these great careers? They don't take 4 years or $120,000 to get. Most parents say, yes, but not for my kid. My kid is going to get a bachelor's degree. So it just goes on. Employers love these kinds of credentials because they're relevant, they're responsive to their needs. Often they help us design the curriculum. They trust them, and they reduce search costs. A lot of companies now are investing in our curricula to produce a graduate that they can interview and get a potential job. The job seekers are typically older because we're having trouble attract that 17, 18-year-old. They see tremendous benefit. These pathways are affordable, on average about $4,000 to become that electrician or that pharmacy technician. They're very cost effective. They're obtained in months, not years. And they're stackable. Most of these non-degree certified completers will come back and earn a degree. And I love this. These pathways represent the fastest way out of poverty. And we were lagging in Virginia. We've been around for 50 years. 19 other states were investing in these kinds of pathways with state support so these states could scale these programs up. we were not in the game, and we had some close-by competitors that were. So we wanted to do something about it. Incidentally, we were created 50 years ago. You're looking at a picture, a real shot of the founding chancellor, Dana Hamill, still alive, 94 years old. Calls me up from time to time. He says, "You're doing a great job." I said, "How do you know that?" He said, "Because I never read about you in the paper." And our founding governor, Mills Godwin, you're actually looking at a picture of a controversy. This was a scale of the first campus that we were going to build in 1966. And the controversy was, it's in the middle of nowhere. See, the deal is someone has to give us the land, and a farmer stepped up and said, "I'll take my farm, my kids don't want it, and I'd like you to build a community college there." And the board was split because it was in the middle of nowhere. But my chancellor, Dana, he prevailed, and they built this campus in the middle of nowhere. It's called Annandale, Virginia. So when we were set up, I think the funding formula was the right kind of formula. We were set up to produce the ones and the twos, not the sevens. The sevens, the high schools produced the sevens, and it was on-the-job training. That is no longer the case. So we were evolving. The employment world was pivoting, but our funding formula was not. So we had to do something about it. We had some studies, but more importantly, I kind of took off and I held a whole bunch of town hall meetings around the state of Virginia. And business leaders came out, and that was very impressive to me because I find most business leaders are quick to complain, but they don't really have time to show up. And they were showing up at these town hall meetings. We made the case to the governor and to the legislature, and then we had our first in our history, in 50 years, first funding formula to produce what I call the sevens. And we're having great results. It's called the Workforce Credentials Grant, as Jeff referenced. We're in year one. We've had over 4,000 enrollments. Our completion rate is north of 95%. So typically, a student now would have to come in and pay $1,000, not $4,000. The problem that we had before is if someone had to write a check for $4,000, 90% of Virginians cannot do that, even by trying to collect their crazy aunts and uncles to try to help them with $4,000. Now it's $1,000. And the areas that we're seeing this kind of in the buckets where these people are pursuing these jobs are in IT. The big one there is the associate degree, in manufacturing and logistics, and in health. So I would suggest to you that Virginia's story is a national story, that most of the employers, when they're seeking they're seeking people for jobs, the difficulty now is in the sevens. It's not the ones and the twos, with some exception. So thank you very, very much for listening. Thank you.